All right. Hello and welcome just to family. This is giving you something to talk about, live TV. And I am your I am your host, Melissa Krechler. I'm an identity coach and a spiritual teacher. This episode is sponsored by the Butterfly Lotus Company. They have a introduction to spiritual gifts and abilities waiting for you on the homepage of their website. If you go and take a look at butterflylotuscompany.com, link in the description. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about spiritual awakenings, spiritual myths, spiritual stereotypes, dark night of the soul. We're gonna be getting into a bunch of spiritual, FUBUs. I just call them that. We're gonna get into a bunch of spiritual stuff, and to do that, we're gonna have Jen Sankey on. So I hope I said that properly.
You did.
Perfect. I think I'm like 42 for 42. All right, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to hang out with us today. My name's Jen Sankey. I'm a tarot reader. I'm an energy worker, author. I kind of just usually say I'm just a professional witch because I just kind of do pretty much a little bit of everything under that umbrella. I am currently creating 2 tarot decks. One is self-published, also called Stardust Wanderer Tarot, and the other one is Enchanted Forest Felines, and that's going to be published through Llewellyn. So so that's kind of what I have going on.
Very nice. Very nice. I always wanted to make my own tarot deck. I always thought about not tarot deck. I actually wanted to make oracle decks. I lean towards more oracle than tarot. I find it was a little bit easier for my analytical mind to stick with a certain number. But I was actually taught by my mentor how to read oracle cards by using a deck of cards.
Yeah.
Which was really fantastic. So that's actually how I teach my clients, right? To build their intuition is to do that, which not everybody does. So spiritual myths and stereotypes. This is something you and I talked about in the pre-screening and it was fantastic because there are so many spiritual stereotypes out there that give the word psychic and the word witch and the word tarot and all of that bad names. And I like breaking the myths on that and just breaking the stereotypes because it isn't all what the media makes it out to be, right? Mm-hmm. Did you ever watch Supernatural?
Oh, yes.
I loved it, right?
Yeah.
I loved it, and they were good looking. I'm not gonna lie, they were Jensen.
It helps for sure.
But I laughed because it was always the witch and the psychic were always like the bad guys, and I'm like, why?
They're always so creepy looking and like ugly and gross, and I'm just like, what?
Mm-hmm. And then the demons were hot.
Right, I know. Like, I'm confused. What?
Yeah, absolutely, right? So every day, let's bust into some of those. So let's talk about, demons. So I personally don't believe in God, in the religious sense of God, right? I believe in a higher power. And for anybody watching or catching live or watching the replay, whatever it is that you're joining us today, know that we don't judge anybody. Part of us being spiritual is that we accept everybody for the way that they are and for who they are and the different beliefs. And so we're just sharing our knowledge on these topics and our opinions. So that's just to clarify.
Yes.
But I don't believe that there's heaven and hell. I believe that hell is on earth. That's part of our experience, right? We need to experience the negativity in life, in having a human experience, to learn, right? And to grow. And so that our souls, our spirits, whatever you want to call it, has that awareness. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on, bad and good, right? Evil spirits even is a big one.
Right. Well, I guess the biggest evil spirit that we all know is like Satan, the devil, and all of those things. And I don't believe that there is an actual Satan, and that's one of those things for me through a lot of reading, a lot of research, talking to many different people, just about how even the Christian religions were kind of absorbed some of the pagan ways to try to, develop them in a way so that the pagan people at the time would accept the Christian faith. And so they kind of took and grabbed things from that. So that's kind of where my, thinking is on that. And it also kind of comes down to the fact that, being responsible for your own actions. I don't feel that you can just blame, the devil made me do it, or, I was influenced by Satan. And and that's something that I'm really big on, is just being responsible for your own actions. And if you do something not so great, that's on you. It's not on anybody else. And, that kind of pulls that in, the God factor in. And it's like, yeah, it would be great to be able just to pray or do whatever you do and just say, oh, I'm forgiven, and that's it. But it comes down to self-responsibility, self-awareness, and just being responsible, being a responsible human. While you're here on earth, you need to be responsible with what you say, what you do, how you treat yourself, how you treat your body and others as well. And it isn't so easy as, you can do all these terrible things and just be like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. Okay, you're forgiven. And then off you go, because you're not learning any lessons. And a lot of times these things happen because you do need to learn these lessons. So for me, it's so much broader than just good and bad, heaven and hell and that sort of thing.
I agree. I completely agree with that. Now, let's dive into the title of the show, Spiritual Awakenings. So they're fun. Spiritual awakenings are fun, and not always in a good way. A lot of people will. So part of the PDF that the Butterfly Lotus Company shared was that some of the signs of a spiritual awakening, and most people nowadays, I find, are leaning towards spirituality when they've got a trauma that they're dealing with, whether that's a really negative trauma or just being unhappy within themselves and trying a bunch of stuff, and then they turn to spirituality. So I find that spirituality is becoming more mainstream in a self-help way.
Right.
Rather than,
Yeah, because I think too, when those big events happen that kind of get you questioning, if you believed in this good and bad, that's heaven and hell, and then something really traumatic or bad happens, it makes you question it. Like, okay, hold on. I believed that, if I was a good person, everything good would happen to me, nothing bad would happen, there's the heaven and hell part, but something bad happens and you're like, okay, wait a minute. So I know that I'm not a bad person, but bad things are happening. So there's got to be more explanations. There's got to be more to it than that. So I think that's when, like you said, you're like, okay, now I'm seeking. I'm looking for more answers. I'm looking for different, perspectives on things. And I think that's really what kind of triggers that whole thing.
Yeah. The question of what's our purpose? Right? Why are we here? What's the purpose of life? I love this question. And so many people ask this question, and then everybody struggles kind of to give the answer of what's the purpose of life. And I'm just sitting here going, I know. So I always say that the purpose of life is we come here. So whether you believe in souls, spirits, heaven, earth, whatever it is that you believe in, we are energetic beings. There is an energy inside of us, or a soul inside of us, that fuels our existence, right? And it gives us knowledge, and it gives us identity and purpose, and our likes and dislikes, and that's part of our identity is this spirit, right? And so my belief is that we come here to experience negativity, to experience growth, right? I always say negativity is the catalyst to positive growth. We have to learn or experience in order to learn and grow. If you go and touch something, if you go and touch the stove and mom says, no, it's hot, don't touch it, you're still going to touch it because you don't know any better and you think you're smart, right? Because we're not going to get into kids though. But you touch it and then you're like, ow, that hurt. And then you learn not to touch it again. Right? Or you learn to be smarter, or you learn to pay attention, or everything that we experience is a lesson, and it's a lesson meant to help us become smarter, stronger, just every day happier, healthier, and better versions of ourselves.
Right.
When we pass, we go, and if you believe in angels, if you believe in ascended masters, guardians, I call them your spirit dream team. Right. So if you believe that you have a spirit dream team, that dream team has experienced what you're looking to, like what you're experiencing in this moment. And that's where that guidance comes in, because they've been through it, right? They've been through it, they understand it. And that's how you get that help and that guidance from them to move forward through those experiences.
Right.
If you and I, past lives. So I believe in multiple lifetimes. I absolutely believe in multiple lifetimes. And I believe that certain spirits get to a point where they become ascended masters themselves.
Right.
When you become an ascended master, you have to have that knowledge from the experiences. You don't get that knowledge on the other side.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there definitely is there's a couple schools of thought on that. Because I do know that some do believe that ascended masters are really just the highest spiritual beings, but they have never lived on earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really think it comes down to what resonates with you and what you really feel is right for you, because I do feel that, especially with angels and angel work, there's a couple different ways to kind of go about it, like the archangels, they never lived on earth, as far as, from what I've read and kind of what I resonate with. But there are definitely kind of, like those earth spirits or the past lives. Like, I feel that those past lives are the ones that are teaching you the lessons more than any spirit team or anything, because they're coming back because they, like you said, they lived that life and they went through these things, and they, when they came to that ending point, realized like, oh, okay, this, we need to learn these things. We really need to kind of bring this up again. And that's why a lot of times, there's certain situations that come up over and over and over again, because like we haven't learned it yet. Like, and it is kind of like that burning your hand on the stove thing. Like, maybe you just poked it and it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. But then next time you put your whole hand on it and like, ouch, that hurt. And then the next time you're like, well, maybe if I touch it with, this wet towel will be better. And that didn't work either. But after a while, you're like, okay, so this isn't going to work. I'm going to use this pot holder, and look, it's okay. But it takes time. And, and I think your life purpose changes. I think it changes based on when you learn those lessons, because once it's kind of like a video game, like you're leveling up at that point, because you go through and you learn this life lesson, and, whoever you believe in, whether it's your spirit team that determines it, a higher source, whatever, they're like, all right, they learned this lesson, then you kind of leveled up at that point. So your purpose may change a little bit. And then once that you're going along there, and then that may happen again, or you may just stay the same this lifetime, no matter what. But I do think there is, there's a little leeway there when it all comes together and just how you're going along.
Absolutely. It's like having irrational fears, right? Mm-hmm. If you have an irrational fear of water, right, or snakes, there's the potential that that's something that you experienced in a past life. Right. And now it's like you didn't learn the lesson in that. Right. Maybe you have the karmic lesson that you didn't learn. Maybe you have, irrational fears to me are those past life events that are like, ooh, okay, we've been down that road. We're not going there again. You stay away from the water.
Right. And well, that's why you have the hypnotists too, that they tap into those past life and those fears and kind of getting to the root of them so they can fix that. Because there are, some people really have some really kind of crazy fears about stuff that, like, some, might be afraid of like sticks, and you're like, why are you afraid of sticks? Well, maybe in a past life, that's how they burned you at the stake, with a whole bunch of sticks, like maybe that's something you were focused on as you were burning away, you don't know, but it is. And I think it's one of those things that you want to work on, but you don't want it to be all encompassing. You know what I mean? Like, just bits, just kind of poking at it here and there, working away at it, because you don't want to get stuck in the past. You don't want to get stuck on the negative or the bad of it, but you still want to work on it, and just, I think, picking away at it a little by little, and knowing that, you know what, if you never get to the end of that, that's okay, because it'll just roll right into the next one.
Yeah. I ended up getting, when I first started my spiritual practice, I ended up getting my past life regression certification.
Mhm.
And it was amazing. It just the process, the thought behind it, the guidance behind it, and to be able to, heal those past traumas, right, that we've carried forward is powerful. And you are right. Every lifetime, for the most part, each lifetime has a different purpose. Has a different lesson, right? You're not always going to tap into your past lives as much as you are. Like for you and I, we maybe tap into those past lives a little bit more because we're on a spiritual path, because you and I are both spiritually teaching and, giving that insight onto the different spiritual levels. And we need those downloads. We need that thought process and the remembrance of different past lives in those careers, right? Because one of my past lives that I can go into is I want to say Egyptian. It's been a while, but I was an Egyptian, and during it I was actually psychic. And in those days they were revered, right? They were protected, they were squirreled away, they had guards. They were revered because of their gifts and abilities.
Right.
And then now you come into society these days and it's like, whoa,
right.
I'm going to stay away from you. Right. So it's actually interesting to think when spirituality became a thing, when psychics became a thing. I think we've been this way since, humanity began.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And like you were saying about,
it's always been there.
Yeah.
It's always been around. I mean, and then, you kind of roll into like the 20s and 30s when it really took a boom, and that's when the Ouija boards came and the seances and all of that stuff, which, unfortunately, probably we'll say 85-90% of it wasn't real, because they were able to kind of debunk those things. But it kind of brought all of that back up, like, hey, this is going on, because there were so many, the depression was there and all these things, and people were dying, and the life expectancy wasn't very long then, so they were always trying to find a way to communicate with these people and really stay connected to them. So that all kind of came into play, and unfortunately a lot of people did kind of play off those people and their grieving and all of that. But that did throw it all back in here, and it did kind of revive it for a while, and then kind of faded away, and then the 60s 70s popped right back up again with the use of LSD and all those things. Everyone's having a spiritual experience.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Everybody was somewhere that was not here. So
but
it's interesting to kind of, when you look at it in a historical sense, just how it ebbed and flowed, and how then you had, if you go back in, those witch trials kind of came into play, and all of those things, it's cool, it's not cool, it's cool, it's not cool. And it's really interesting to see that.
Yeah. Speaking of Ouija boards, my daughter wants a Ouija board, and I'm not against getting her one because I have a different opinion. So I saw a Facebook post a few years ago about somebody asking about Ouija boards. And it was all these mixed opinions. And like I said, we don't judge anybody for their opinions.
Right.
But I actually laughed because all the comments, like half the comments were negative, half the comments were positive. And you and I use divination tools, right? A Ouija board. Now, when I first had my spiritual awakening, I grew up in a religious household. I was taught about heaven and hell. I was taught about negative spirits and all of that, right? Because I was raised in a religious household. Mm-hmm. And not to say all of them are like that, but mine was.
Right.
And I always fought against that thought pattern. And so when I was about 12, I couldn't go to sleep. It was about a week-long period where I couldn't go to sleep without a Hope, Love, and Glory necklace that my mom had gave me. She said, oh, this will help protect you. And it had a cross on it, all of this. But I couldn't go to sleep without seeing somebody attacking me. And I would fall asleep and I felt like somebody was attacking me. Along that same week, we had a bunch of haunting events throughout the house.
Right.
And so being in a religious household, it was, oh, it's a negative spirit and all of this other stuff. I didn't find out until I had my spiritual awakening at 31. And that's when I found out, you know, there aren't any negative spirits. And this is my belief. This is what I was taught. And it resonated completely with me, is that there are no negative spirits, but there are negative entities. And that is an energy from a traumatic event that has been fed a ton of energy and becomes like what you would call a poltergeist or anything along those lines, right?
Well, like that's even like the shadow people and all of that. So I actually just wrote an article about shadow people. So,
but at the same time, they're not out to hurt you. They want the energy, right? They want that negative energy. So they'll scare you or what happens, right? But I don't believe that there's any spiritual beings that can actually hurt you in a physical sense, right?
Yeah.
Fear, yes, absolutely. That's my thought belief. So when I had my spiritual awakening, it was when I realized that it was different. Everything changed for me, right? And it opened my eyes and I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Right.
And I was able to, you know, utilize and access my own gifts and abilities. But I had this discussion about the Ouija board because so many people think that the Ouija board is actually, you know, going to connect you to negative spirits. Well, if you don't believe in negative spirits, one, there's nothing to fear.
Right.
Two, tarot cards, animals, crystals, pendulums, oracle cards, colors.
Yeah.
Runes. You know, there are runes. There are so many different variations of divination. Fire is a divination tool. Right. And can be used as a divination tool. Water, earth, right?
Yeah.
And a Ouija board is just a divination tool to connect you to the other side.
Right.
And I don't believe in negative really, spirits.
They're made from Hasbro. You know, you buy it from a toy manufacturer, and you know, if you buy one from there, unless you buy one that somebody has created, which then a lot of times those are called witches boards, not Ouija boards, because Ouija board is a name that from the toy company. So it's like one of those things, like that's not even a real name of it. Like when you were actually using that tool, that was a name that was made up by Hasbro and the brothers that made it and all of that, because there's like a whole story about that. And, you know, it is a tool, you know, and I've had people say to me with the tarot cards, like I was doing an event and an older gentleman came up to me and he goes, you know, you're opening portals to other dimensions. And I'm like, oh, cool. I love to travel, you know, he didn't like that, but it's one of those things like, why in the world would you think that I'm doing? Like, what, like, stop it. So I think it's in, like you said, it's all when your intention, when you're coming to these things that you're using, like nobody ever really picks up a crystal and it's like, oh my gosh, there's like bad spirits in this crystal. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and you see with dolls, you know, like there's the possessed dolls and all of those things. And, you know, I think a lot of that is movie driven, you know, society driven. There isn't really, you know, any real, practicing witch doesn't worry about that stuff because that's not a part of their intention. You know, you're not going to go up to, you know, I'm not picking up my tarot cards like, okay, cool. Where are all the bad spirits that are going to tell me terrible things? You know, you set your intention and, you know, okay.
That's like the death card.
Yeah. Which it has actually nothing, like that's one of my favorite cards, you know, because that's all
about change,
you know, it's something has to die so something new can happen. And if that doesn't, then you're going to be stuck in that same pattern that you probably shouldn't be in right now, you know.
It's like fall.
Yeah.
Right. In the fall, everything dies.
Right.
You go through the cold snap and then it's all reborn.
Right. You just have,
right?
it's like kind of seeing like, if there was like a fire in the forest, and then have all ashes and brush, but then in a couple months you start seeing the little sprouts coming through again because those ashes actually fertilized the ground in order for the new to grow. So that's like, that's how you look at it. Or even if you think of the tower card, it's like, yeah, this is that event situation or whatever it is that you have not been giving attention to. Like, it needs to change. If there's that toxic relationship that you're like, you know what, I'll deal with that next week. I'm not worrying about that right now. Or a habit that you have that, say you're a smoker and you're like, you know what, yep, I'm cutting down. And the universe is like, nah, you're not doing any of these things. So bam, now it's happening. And now you got to just ride along with it because right after the tower, you get the star card. So it's that hope, it's like you have that hope coming through. So it's all your perception. And when you come to anything with a negative mindset, it's going to turn out negative, because the universe doesn't know good and bad. The universe doesn't have all that, they don't have good and bad, evil and wise or whatever. It just is. So if you're putting all that negative out there, the universe is like, all right, that's what they want. Send it right back. So it's all mindset and intention.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't like to say this, and I'm not talking about everybody when I say this, so please just bear with me while I go through it to anybody watching or catching the replay. A lot of bias, not a lot of, but there is a lot of bias in religious cultures towards spirituality. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that stereotype. I had a lady come up to me. She wanted to board her horses at my house. She, all this fun stuff. She ended up coming to my house to meet me. And she said, she was talking about home-based businesses. And I said, I just started my own business. And this is when I first started the Butterfly Lotus Company. And she said, what do you do? And I had just gotten comfortable saying it out loud. And I said, I'm a psychic. And she goes, okay, I'm going home now.
Right.
I'm like, absolutely, have a wonderful day.
Yes.
And she wouldn't deal with me again. She sent her husband every time. So I would communicate with her husband. And I laughed and I'm like, I don't judge. There's no reason to judge, right? But I find that unless you're spiritually bypassing, because there are spiritual warriors out there who use spirituality as a negative tool to brush off everything. Right. And they spiritually bypass, right? And that's not okay. I've seen a lot of them, not a lot as in everybody or even a majority of the population.
Just go on TikTok and you'll get your full of it right there.
Yeah. And those are people who are not truly practicing spirituality. When you truly practice spirituality, you're confident in your own beliefs, but there's no judgment. Spirituality is a freedom.
Right. And it's about you and it's not about everybody else. So exactly. When you have those people going on and saying, and that's something I work a lot with people and stuff too, is just, like, well, you shouldn't be doing this. If you really were a tarot reader, you'd be doing it this way. Or if you were a witch, you'd be doing it this way. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, that has nothing to do with you. What do you believe? And a lot of times when you ask those people what they believe, what their beliefs, what is their like code that they go by? They don't have anything because they never really sat down and thought about it because they're so worried about what everybody else is doing. It's like the nosy old lady looking through the window, knowing everybody's business. But, you look behind her house is a mess because she pays no attention to it because she's so worried about what's going on outside, and I think that's a really big thing. And I think if somebody is newer looking, just looking for somebody like a mentor or anything, I would say do some deep dives. Don't be afraid to contact that person, ask them questions. And I even say that when people want readings, if you want to ask me some questions before we actually do a reading, I'm totally for that because there are a lot of people that won't. nope, this is how I read. This is what I do. That's it, done. And, I just don't think that's fair, because a lot of times, if we hire a babysitter, we're going to go and talk to them beforehand, and it's like, you should extend that courtesy to yourself as well, especially when you're jumping into spirituality and learning those things, because there's so much information, so much. And
Oh,
now that we have, when I first started, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't all of these apps and all of these things you can go on. Like, you just got some books and you started reading, and hopefully you kind of came across some people who did what you did, But now that there is so many avenues, that it is almost overwhelming. I almost feel bad for people now, that in a way, because it's like so much information at once and you have to kind of sift through it. But I always recommend that reading a little bit of everything, like get your hands on some books and just start reading. And because that's what I did. I mean, I read about, I remember, and I wish I remembered the name of this book. I'd gotten it at the library and it was like this thick, and it was about all different religions. Like, each chapter was a different religion. And I'm telling you, that was like the best resource ever. And I was only like 14 when I read it, so I didn't write down what the title was, but that gave me so much insight. And it gave me so much, like, it really helped build my base of what I believed, what I didn't believe, what I resonated with, what I didn't resonate with. And, and that's something I recommend, like, grab a notebook and just, like, if something resonates with you, jot it down and just keep going, because before you know it, you'll have just this whole book that's like kind of your own, spiritual, a religion,
or five.
Or 5 or 10, or, as things go on. And I think too, to realize as they go along, it's going to change. What resonated with me at 14 doesn't probably resonate with me now, or maybe it does, but just in a different way, because I have that experience in it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, and I'll do our mid-episode promotion at the same time. So this episode, of course, is sponsored by the Butterfly Lotus Company, which just happens to be the company that I first started. And the reason I started that was because everybody around me was like, you have to choose. You have to choose. Are you a witch? Are you a psychic? And I said, no, I don't have to choose, though. I don't want to choose. And I have, and I'm not going to grab it now, but I have a binder filled with everything I wanted to learn about. And I've probably gotten through a quarter of that binder, because as I went through it, I said, okay, I want to learn about this. Well, maybe not, right? When you're first starting out, and that's actually one of the things that I deal with. I like to work with newbies. My spiritual business is all about newbies, because I want you to feel empowered in your choice, right? In what you like, in what resonates with you, not what everybody else tells you it should be. So if I have somebody come to me and they're like, okay, Melissa, I want to work with you. Let's do some spiritual teaching. Where should I start? First thing I ask, where do you want to start? What's the first thing you want to learn about?
Right. And usually there is something that pops in their head, because they'll be like, oh, wait, I want to learn tarot. I want to learn crystals. I want to learn Reiki. There is always the gateway thing.
Yeah. And if they say to me, Melissa, I want to learn about angels, I'll be like, absolutely. But I'm not going to teach you that, because that's not my forte. Here's a program, or here's a book all about that you can utilize, right? There's so much information out there, but it's the confidence. It's, feeling confident enough to know, okay, what gifts and abilities do I have? And that's why I linked that into this video, because it is, what gifts and abilities do I have? Right. What am I capable of doing? And when you figure that out, that empowers you to create more, right? And to say, okay, if I have these gifts, I want to learn this. And always start with you. Don't start with everything outside of you. Start with you. What am I capable of? What am I interested in? Oh, that looks neat that she's doing that, but is it something that I want to do?
Yeah. And sometimes you start learning something and you're like, this isn't for me. And you just, and I totally, and it's like, that's okay. Like, you don't have to learn it all the way through, because even like with tarot, a lot of people pick it up and then they put it back down because there is a lot to it, but 5 years later, 2 years later, they might pick it up again and just go running. And I think the really important thing too is that you don't need a label. You don't. and I think that's kind of an empowering thing to let somebody know too, because we are just kind of a society of labels. We love to label everything, right? And, for me, like I have identified as a witch since I was 13, 14 years old, and I have it like tattooed on my wrist. So for me, that's what I resonate with. But I know people who do tarot, who do, do crystals, Reiki healer, and they don't identify as a witch. They're like, I don't really even like that word. And that's totally fine.
Yep.
And it's also one of those things like, kind of going back to the bypassing too, like just because you don't resonate with that word, maybe, or maybe you don't resonate with somebody who doesn't have a label, it's not wrong. That doesn't make it wrong. And,
Exactly.
if it's bugging you that much, then that's some little work that you probably need to do and has nothing to do with that person. And it's being a spiritual person is also something that, you kind of have to recognize too, like, if somebody just rubs you the wrong way all the time and you're just like, usually it has to do with you. And you're like, all right, that means I need to sit with myself. And if you do divination, you can pull cards or oracle cards or whatever, or even just meditate on it and say, be like, what part of this is really bothering me? What do I need to work on in myself to make it okay? And, recognizing that and then just kind of giving yourself that self-care, because a lot of people, that's the whole thing too. Self-care is not, we talk about it all the time, but who actually is really doing it, and
Yep.
spirituality is a lot of self-care and, giving yourself permission to do it.
Yeah. Showing yourself grace. And that's actually funny because, and this isn't a promotional, but that my secondary business, the identity coaching, is all about that. It's all about identity, yourself, right? What you call spirituality, the meditation, the mindfulness, the understanding that you have to be accountable for your reactions and your responses, and that's not even spiritual, right? Meditation, grounding, mindset, mindfulness, gratitude, none of that has to be under the spiritual category, right? And that's what I found is I teach all of that under the identity category rather than the spiritual, because it doesn't have to be. Meditation for me is driving in my car, singing at the top of my lungs because it relaxes me, right? And that's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, some people, and I think that's a part of it too, is people think, all right, I have to meditate. So I have to like sit in the quiet, dark room and meditate on whatever. So many people, walking meditation is fantastic. A guided meditation, just going outside for a walk. And, you might go for a walk and you might see 3 or 4 cardinals out there. So what does that mean to you? And that's something that you're just paying attention to what's going on. And that, once it's like that again, is that like building your base, because you build that base for yourself, getting to know yourself and who you are and what resonates for you. That just kind of brings you into that spirituality part, because at that point, what you want, what you don't want, how it works for you. And then you can really start learning and kind of taking those different paths that really are calling to you at that point.
No, for sure. I absolutely love that. And so do you do any spiritual teaching or?
I do. Yeah, I do. I'm just like one of those people. I just do a little bit of everything. And that's why I just kind of say I'm like professional witch, because it's like everything. I also, with a friend of mine, we do spiritual business coaching. And with that, I do money mindset stuff and everything too. But even with the spiritual business coaching that we do, like before we even get into the business part of it, it's like figuring out who you are. What do you want? What do you want to bring to people? What do you want to share? Why do you want to share it? What are those key words that really make your heart sing, that you want to just go out there and talk to people and tell them about, so that their hearts sing? It's all about, finding that commonality, between you, what you want to do, how you want to do it, and then finding those people. Who are they? What do they want? What are they looking for? And a lot of times people, they don't know what they're looking for either. So by you knowing those answers, you can really tap into that. And again, finding those words, finding those feelings and emotions that they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I really do want to do this. Let me check this out. This looks kind of cool. So, and I do that a lot. And it just even with tarot, for me, it's, I don't just pull cards and this is it. And there you go. And you're off on your way. I'm a homework giver. No matter what divination I do, there's always homework at the end.
Always,
Always,
always. Yep.
always. But
I'm
there are people that don't resonate with that. And they're like, no, I just want a reading and that's it, which I can totally do that. And for me, especially when you're doing readings and when you're looking for a tarot reader, I should even say, when, ask the questions, because that person, you may talk to them and be like, you know what? This is a little too much for me. I don't want to do that. And me as a tarot reader, I've definitely referred people to other readers that I know. I'm like, you know what? Maybe our styles just don't vibe. Cool. But I think you really work well with this person.
exactly.
And I've had them come back to me and be like, oh my God, so-and-so is wonderful. And, but I would really love a tea leaf reading from you. And then, you know what I mean? So it works, and not being afraid to reference out other people and even spiritual coaches. And, there's been people that we've, my friend and I, we work together. So like Pam and I will be coaching them, and we're just like, you know what? We're not the kind of coach that you need, so I'm going to recommend you to someone else, and you go ahead and do that. And then sometimes they do that work with that other person, and then they are ready to come back to you,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
that is in. And I feel like you kind of have to go, even with spirituality, with anything that you're doing, is looking at the big picture, like, you know what, I want to be here and I want to be there. And you need to just put that out into the universe and really trust yourself, trust your intuition, and trust the universe to kind of guide you where you're supposed to go and where you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely important. Do your research. I have a guide that I give people how to choose a coach, mentor, guide, psychic, intuitive, healer, medium, all of that, because it is individual. There is going to be somebody who works for you, and not all of us are like that. I don't like working with everybody. Yeah, it's even for the show, right? Even for the show. Whenever I do a pre-screening episode for a show, I say, you know what? I can't work with everybody. Everybody can't work with me. There's no offense taken. If you turn around and tell me, hey, we just don't fit, I'll be like, okay, not a problem if you change your mind, or, I agree, or what have you. Everybody needs to understand that your unique identity, your unique energy doesn't always mesh with everybody else. As a psychic intuitive, so I do card readings, but I do oracle readings, right? So I just say card readings, but I guess I can just say oracle reader.
Yeah.
So I do oracle readings, and I have a disclaimer right on my website, and I have a disclaimer. I have another piece that says, this is what a reading with me is like. Right. And it says, I will not give you dates. I don't believe in giving dates. You ask me when you're going to die or when your relationship's going to end. I'm not answering that question. Spirit does not give me that. There's a hard no boundary there. I don't want to know it. They're not going to tell it to me.
Yeah, I usually say, I tell people I'm not the Grim Reaper. So
Yeah.
I don't have a date for you, just because, just being like funny about it, but because like, no, I'm here to like, and a lot of times the question they ask isn't really even the question. Like I always say, it's usually halfway in the reading, the real stuff starts coming out, and then you're like, oh, okay, here we go. And that's why a lot of times I give homework, because, we get through that hour and a half, whatever it is. And I'm like, you know what, you're not done here. And we need to kind of, I'm giving you the option to take care of yourself and work on yourself and do what you need to do. Here are a couple things. If, and if you have a question, I always tell people, email me, it's totally fine. But a lot of times I will work with people on a regular basis for as long as they feel they need it. I had one woman, I worked with her probably every other week for almost a year. And we really worked through a lot of stuff, and just, really that, like, she just needed that extra guidance on like really getting to know herself, because she had a lot of past stuff that was just built up, and we just kind of worked through it, and we got there, and she got to that point where she's like, you know what, I'm good. And I'm like, fantastic, like, go do you, like,
Yeah.
know, and that was really, you know, a lot of times that is how it works, you know, and you do, you know, it's like you just got their little butterflies and then you let them go.
And that's what we strive for, right? Not everybody's like us. And that it drives me nuts because most people who are genuinely out to help you and help you grow and help you heal, they don't want you to need them.
Right.
Right. I want my clients to work with me for however long they need me. And then as soon as I feel, or they feel, or as soon as I feel like they're ready, because it's usually I get it, I see it before they do.
Right.
I'll be like, hey, how are you feeling? Like, do we want to continue? Do you feel pretty good? And I build them up even more so that they're capable of taking that chance. I'm always available for you, but at the same time, I want my clients to not need me.
Right.
Right. I don't want you to need me.
Yeah,
I want you to be able to do it
I'm
yourself.
the cheerleader at that point. I moved to cheerleader mode. Yeah. You know what I mean? Especially if it's like a business thing, because I'm probably following them on Facebook and all that. So anytime I see their stuff, I'm liking it. I'm giving it some emojis, a yay, you're awesome, and just to kind of move along. And it makes me happy to see that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's just so important that when, you know, if you are seeking somebody that to help you with those things, that's kind of a big, you know, kind of a big red flag. If they're like, oh no, you know what, we worked together for 3 months, but I don't think you're done. You need me right now, you know? And I always like to have them make the decisions, you know, like you said, we
exactly
really know like they're ready or they're not ready. And you're just like, hey, like, what's up? Like, how's it going? What do you think? You know, and you let them make that decision, you know, and there are, you know, even in the coaching industry, because it's so big right now. And especially I think the pandemic happened, then boom, there's coaches everywhere for everything, you know, like so many. So, you know, I think that's something that's super, super important. And when you are getting it to the end, you know, it's like, you know what, let me know how you're feeling. You can go this way, and this way, you let me know. And that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So we've touched on spiritual awakenings. We've touched on some spiritual myths, stereotypes for sure. Maybe not so much myths, but stereotypes for sure. We touched on the dark night of the soul. So for anybody watching, just to recap, dark night of the soul is usually a catalytic event that awakens you spiritually. That's your spirit has finally said enough is enough. You're getting a full-blown temper tantrum, so you can't ignore me anymore.
Yeah.
That's basically an awakening. Hello, I am here. You cannot push me aside.
Yep.
So spiritual myths. Meditation is one of my favorite ones. We did talk about Ouija boards, right? Negative spirits, stuff like that. But meditation is one of my favorite ones where a lot of people, I have a different view of meditation and grounding than most people. Mm-hmm. So my version of grounding is just literally bringing you back to the moment. It's not connecting you to the earth. It's bringing your head into the present moment and not worrying about the future or the past.
Right.
That's grounding for me. Right. Yeah. Just bringing you back to center.
Right.
Meditation now is the quiet, right? And you did mention this. It's the quiet, the having to sit in a room and
just like, like
yeah, clear your head.
Yeah.
We don't clear our heads.
Right.
Your head does, like, your thought processes. I don't know about any of you, but lying in bed, my brain's going a mile a minute.
Right. I think that the more you try to clear it, the more stuff starts jumping in.
Exactly.
So it's almost like the reverse action going on.
Yeah. For the first few years, people were like, try meditation. I took a meditation course and I loved the woman teaching it. Loved her teaching. But I took a meditation course and I felt so awkward in the course. It was like I was in a church again. And no offense to her or anything else, but I felt awkward and I was like, this isn't right for me. And so I started to get spiritual downloads.
Right.
And spirit says to me, Melissa, you know, this isn't the way you do it. And I'm like, then what, how do I do it? Like, what's the point?
That awkward feeling too. Like people ignore it, you know, like, oh, you know, like you said, you're in meditation. You're like, okay, this isn't for me. Like everybody listening, that is your intuition. It is telling you something and you need to listen to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I ended up realizing that meditation isn't about clearing your mind. It's about clearing your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
When you can calm and quiet your emotions, that's when things come through. You're not emotionally charged and thinking, I'm not confident. You're not emotionally charged thinking, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a medium. That fear isn't there. That self-doubt isn't there. It's just thought processes, right? Thoughts are coming in. If you want to connect to your spirit dream team and you are gifted, that's when it happens. When all those self-doubts, all those limiting beliefs, all of those, emotions that we've got stored up, that's when all of that goes away, is in a meditation. It's just literally removing the emotions and relaxing your body.
Right.
Your mind is still going. Hi, Bridget. So we got a hello on the line.
It is, again, that it's that whole mindfulness part of it. And I think, again, that's that whole societal thing, the movies about what meditation is and everything. And I just really also think it's just bringing yourself back to the present moment and just being aware of your physical self even too. Like a lot of times, like I'll tell people, if you are just feeling like scattered and whatever, in which that, again, that's your emotions, your thoughts or whatever, just go run your hands under cold water, like mindfully do it. Like I'm just, just to bring yourself back, because some people, everybody, has a sense that's a little bit stronger. So some people going outside and putting their feet on the ground, that works really well for them. But if you do that and you're like, okay, cool, now my feet are cold, then that isn't for you. Try something else. And, like I said, I've told people just run their hands under cool water, because sometimes, some people need that jarring moment, to like bring something in, or, picking up
Rubbing a crystal.
Yeah, a crystal, a mala
Right.
beads, anything like that. I love to do, I actually have like a Ganesh and a Lakshmi altar, and I will do, I'll use my mala beads and do a Lakshmi, prayer through the beads. And to me, that's very like that's soothing, but there's words happening and it just brings you to that moment though. And it brings you, if you want to like bring something in, or, you have something that you're really working on, it kind of just like hyper focuses it for you. But sometimes it's putting on some music. And I have a tribal drum and stuff like that. And sometimes just doing that, and just like whatever happens, whatever's coming out, comes out, there could be days you just go outside. And like I said, I live on top of a mountain. I just yell off the mountain. Sometimes it's just needed. And you feel so much better after.
Absolutely. So Bridget says, I'm learning to see and hear spirit. That's great. That's a medium, obviously, for anybody watching. That would be a medium, because we're not going to all have spiritual viewers. So I barely get an image. Is this it, or will I see them in my eyesight? So there are different variations. You can see things through your eyes, right? In your physical eyes, you can see things through your physical eyes. But I find for me, most of the time, I'm seeing it in my mind's eye, right? Where it's the picture is in my head, not in outside of my head. So I think it just depends. There are people who can do both. I can do both. I've seen little old ladies walking past me down the street. Right. So it depends on what your gifts are. Not everybody is going to be able to do or utilize all of the different clairs. Not everybody is going to be able to use their sight in the physical world rather than in your mind's eye.
Right. And I think it's really important too, though, to release expectation when you're working on these things. Like just because you had something happen, you got a little download. And there is, for me, I kind of have a mix of all of the senses. Like sometimes I'll smell stuff. Sometimes I will physically see. Sometimes it's in my mind's eye. Sometimes I feel stuff, a lot of times when I'm working with others, they're like, oh, well, I heard something, but now I sat down, I was waiting to hear something. You have to release expectation. And that's all a part of the process. And that's all a part of building all of your senses, because it's
The
so
confidence,
important. Yeah. And it's just so
right?
important. Like, write it down. Like, and you know what, whatever you get, whatever comes through, you say thank you, always say thank you. And then that's it. And then if nothing else is coming, that's okay. Because you know what, the next time you do it, you'll know that you had a little something happen. So maybe it's something a little more, but the more you clog up your head with your thoughts of expectations of what you want to happen, nothing's going to happen, because it's all just clogged up with those thoughts. Like, you need to just kind of let it go. And just, sometimes I'll even say, when you want to try to work on that, like, literally say out loud, I'm releasing all expectations, take a couple deep breaths, and then go for it. Because sometimes you need to, like, almost hear yourself say it to, like, believe it.
Yeah. So Bridget says, I am clairsentient. A healer is my main job. I'm trying to bring insight. Yeah, see, I don't know if I can. I am a Blu-ray healer. I transcend energy, so I know my third eye is open. How do I know about the others? I can't answer that question at this particular moment, because I don't know what a Blu-ray healer is. So I'm not capable of answering that question. Do you know what that is? Or
I do actually. And I honestly don't think it has anything to do with the third eye at all. That's root chakra right there. You need to work on your root chakra. Because again, that's that expectation. And even, I mean, you can even, bring it into your solar plexus too, like that ego part of things. Like, yes, I'm all of these things. I know I can bring this. I'm a healer. I can do this.
Okay.
And sometimes, that third eye is so wide open because you're doing so much of that work that it's almost like you're kind of floating up, and it's like so hyper focused there. It's almost like, think about, work on closing down that third eye a little bit, like just shushing it a little bit. Cause I know those third eyes love to blow open. And
Boundaries.
most people love to work with upper chakras, all like, cause that's the fun stuff, that's where you learn everything.
Yeah.
But you know what? We all need to work on a root chakra all of the time. Like, I feel like that's like the forgotten chakra, And I really think though, that by working on some of the lower ones, that will help some of those other clairs to really start to pronounce and bring themselves like that right away. That's what I got when she said that, root chakra.
Yeah. She said it does feel like that some days. Getting on that, I didn't know that the Blu-ray was part of the chakras, which is really interesting. So that would be, is that what that's?
Well, I mean, that's just a healer in general. Anybody that's dealing with any type of Reiki, any type of light healing, any type of anything, your chakras are involved, because that's where we're
for sure.
Yes. That's what we're moving. That's that energy centers and all of that. So it all does kind of come back to the chakras. And all that you have, like the holy fire Reiki, you have like all the different, which they just kind of tap into the different energies of like the kind of the umbrella of healing. And that's just kind of how it works. But with people, especially people that are healers, it is so easy to get lost in those upper chakras a lot of the time. And, you want to, you're so used to working on that one that it almost kind of clears out some of the other ones. But, even touch, that's more of a root chakra type, energy, because it's like that physical body and feeling in yourself. And, if you want to work on those, then you do have to really focus that and really work on that, on the root chakra there. And also just learning to close the third eye a little bit, and just like, and not close it obviously, but just like kind of like settling it down a little bit, because I think too,
It's almost like boundaries for your chakras.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and that
you have to have those boundaries.
Self-care. And that is that self-care again, and we're so busy healing all the people and helping all the people and teaching all the people. We do forget sometimes to kind of tone it down for ourselves, because that will help us, and then that by doing that, because everybody's like, no, I got to keep it open so I can receive all the things. No, you don't. You have to bring it in so that the universe can get in there, when you got that big old light bulb going, nobody can penetrate that. But you got to like dim it a little, just a little bit, and then the other things can settle.
I minimize all of mine. So think of like a Google tab on your computer, right? I minimize all of my chakras before I leave my house. Because that's right.
Oh yeah, like especially if you're very empathic, you need to do that. Again, self-care.
All of it, right? And that's the thing. So one of the things I wanted to mention that Bridget brought up is clairsentience. So I wanted to see if we agree or disagree on this, because I like disagree. But not that I'm highlighting disagree, but I always ask the question. So I believe that when people say that they're clairvoyant or clairaudient, I always feel not to correct them, but to share my knowledge on that, because the clairs are senses.
Yeah.
Right? There are spiritual senses.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ability to feel things. But if you don't have, so I believe there's 5 spiritual gifts and abilities. There's an empath, intuitive, psychic, healer, and medium. Those are our 5 gifts and abilities, right? And psychics, mediums, and healers utilize the clairs to they're tools for that gift, right? Where, if you're a medium, and like I've walked into a house where I'm a medium, I have all of the 5, I have all of the clairs. We're blessed most of the time.
Right.
Sometimes this situation, it wasn't necessarily a blessing, but I walked into a house, no young children, no baby powder whatsoever in the house. And I walked into the house physically choking on baby powder. I had it in my mouth. I smelt it. I tasted it. I was choked. I couldn't breathe, right? Because I had this overwhelming baby powder. Mm-hmm. And so that was a spirit trying to connect. There was a spirit just kind of passing through my friend's house at the time, and they just wanted to be acknowledged. And so that was what that was. But it's interesting, the different belief on the clairs, right? Some people believe that the clairs are unique gifts of their own, where others believe that they're just senses, right? They're just tools that are used by the other gifts.
Right. I don't even love using like the term clairs, because then I feel like it's like setting it at a higher standard than anything else. I feel that we all have the capability to tap into these things. We don't use our whole brain, just even going back to that, and that we don't use our whole brain. There's a lot of stuff going on in our, that we just don't know even going on in our brains. And, I do feel that, some people are born or just more open to using all of them. Some people are so shut down that they can't even access them if they tried. And that could be societal. That could be something in themselves. Like some people are scared. I've met many people who are very gifted and they're like, yeah, I'm not letting that cat out of the bag. Forget it. Not doing it, and you're just like, but I see so much happening, and you're just like, come on. And they're not ready. That may be something in this lifetime that they are not meant to do. And so you have to respect that, and, I do think,
for sure. Yeah.
You have to, that you can develop them too, like I said, it's just working with yourself, knowing your body, paying attention to what's going on, and, knowing your boundaries. Like you said, like, I mean, I have gone, I actually in my kitchen, one time I could smell my husband's grandmother's perfume, and she passed away like 10 years ago. So strong. And it's like, you can't miss Old Lady perfume. I don't even know where to buy Old Lady perfume. Like, it was not in my house. I have 4 boys. Like, there's no perfume. And, for me, I was just like, whoa, okay. But then you also have to know that you have that boundary, because if you're not feeling it today, you know what? Thank you for coming around, but I'm not dealing with this today. I'm not, please leave me alone or whatever. Like I have to do that a lot. I have to do that when I go to sleep a lot. I'll be like, anybody out there? I'm going to sleep tonight. I don't want messages. I don't want anything. And then there's some nights I'll be like, you know what? I have a question, because I get a lot of stuff through my dreams. I get a lot of messages through my dreams. But, as far as the clairs go, I think everybody is special and everyone is unique. And, if you go around saying, I'm clairsentient, I'm clair this, I'm clair that, it kind of makes you out like you're that ego. It's like that ego is popping in again. And that just blocks everything for me. And it's like, I feel like you can't develop anything else if you're so stuck on these labels again, and it's going to the labels. Like, we don't need to label it. Yeah. You know what? You have these abilities. And if you want to develop them, work on yourself, work on your chakras, work on how you're feeling, tasting, smelling things when you go into certain situations, because it can, it's going to be very different for me than it is for you. If we both
Yeah.
walk into a room full of spirits, you know what I mean? We're both going to be picking up stuff, but it's going to be different. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think sometimes when, like, especially in newbies, like they're like, they're so quick. They want to label it, well, I have this sense and I have that sense. And I'm always like, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't care. I want to know how you're feeling. I want to know when you go into this, situation, if how does that feel? Are your the hairs on your arm standing up? Are you getting like a tickle somewhere, or, something like that? Or do you have to clear your throat a lot? Because sometimes that's a thing. And I think that's more important, is just defining it for you instead of worrying about all these broad definitions or broad, labels. I think it's just, and I think it just helps too, because like, again, you put that I'm clairsentient, that's it. And then when you're going to learn these new, you want to learn the new senses, you're so stuck on this is what I am, that again, you got to remove yourself from that to be able to really work on the rest of them.
Yeah. That's why I like saying that there's 5 spiritual gifts and abilities, right? Because it is, being an empath, being an intuitive, being a psychic, a medium, and a healer. Those are such broad categories, right? Where being a healer, you can have multiple healing that you do, right? Energy healing, animal healing. You're not limited, right? It's an umbrella, right? Where the clairs are just part of that umbrella, right? They're underneath the umbrella. Okay, so I'm a psychic. That's one of my umbrellas. So as a psychic, I utilize, my vision, where I'll see visions of the past. And maybe I'll, have feelings of the past or whatever, see it in front of me or see it in my mind's eye. It opens you up to something more, exactly as you said. And I love that, because spirituality is a perception first and foremost, right? Everybody's version of their own spirituality is going to be different.
Right.
It's not going to be the same as everybody else's. So people like you and I who go in and do spiritual teaching, it's what do you feel? What do you think, right? My spiritual signs and symbols that I get from being a medium are going to be completely different to yours, right? Yeah. Colors, color reading, right? Color reading is going to be different between both of us.
Right.
Right. Purple might mean one thing for you and one thing for me. It's building on
like also being asked, like, what does it mean for you? Because I've come across this a lot in teaching, like, no, you're supposed to tell me how I'm supposed to feel about it. Like you're supposed to tell me if I get this, I get that. And it's like, and that's where, that's where it gets a little sticky for people, I feel like sometimes, because you're like, well, where are you feeling it in your body right now? And they're like, well, where am I supposed to be feeling it? I don't have an answer for that. I'm not in your body. I don't know, and it's like, technically I could kind of usually sense where it is, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm that person.
Yeah.
It's like, you are going to have to answer these questions, and they're direct questions, and you might not know the answer, and that's totally fine. But then you know what you need to sit with and think about it for a few days. And really, because you know what, guaranteed, like within a week, you're going to be going through and you're going to be like, that's what it is. That's how I'm feeling it, and then you realize it. And that's, as teachers, because we are, we're just here to help. And as teachers, that's what we want you to do. That self-realization is such a big part of spirituality altogether. It's a part of everything. It's just a part of being human, is that that self-actualization, self-realization, all of those things. And people are kind of scared of it sometimes, and why they will avoid.
The empowerment, though, the empowerment of making that conscious decision on your own.
Yeah, like getting to that other side. Once you do,
it's like, oh, right? I really am, right?
Like it is me. It is, because it is. If I'm telling you, well, you should be hearing this, this, and this, and you should be feeling that, that, and that, and you're like, okay, yeah, I do, and you probably do, but me telling you and then you figuring out on your own is 2 very different emotions.
Yeah. Big time.
Definitely.
All right. Anything you would like to add before we get off the episode?
I think just really just kind of a words of advice is just, read, research, and just really take what resonates with you, and what doesn't, you can leave behind, and you are absolutely okay to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
I would follow that up with maybe thinking about getting a mentor and somebody that you research. Again, read, research, follow up with them.
Right.
But find somebody who resonates with you, and somebody like us who is going to not give you the answers, but help you find your own answers.
Right.
Because I think spirituality, anything, you need to find your own answers.
Right.
And when you do, that's life changing.
Right.
Absolutely.
I usually say I'm a spiritual travel guide.
Oh, I like that.
Right. And just guiding you along.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
Right. Right.
Really like that one. All right, just a family. This has been Spiritual Awakenings. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. Today's guest host has been none other than Jen Sankey of Stardust Wanderer Tarot. You can connect with either one of us in the links in the description. You can connect with the show, justalivetv.com. We are now live streaming straight on the show, or straight on the homepage of the show. You can catch all of our episodes. You can follow us on just about all social media platforms. We appear Monday to Friday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on multiple platforms. And we are always looking for co-hosts, guest bloggers. Excuse me. Sorry, I had a comment that made me choke. I'm not repeating the comment. We got to troll. So if you're looking to be a guest co-host, if you'd like to be a guest blogger, or if you'd like to sponsor the show, please again reach out to me at justalivetv.com. Other than that, this episode has been sponsored by the Butterfly Lotus Company. They have a guide straight on the website where you can find out what it's an introduction to your spiritual gifts and abilities. That's what they're offering on the show. Have a great day. I wish everyone the ability to set those boundaries and create your spirituality that's for you.
All
So
right.
thank
Thanks,
you
everyone.
very much, Jen.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye. I will see you all on the next episode. Lots of love, Distant Family. Bye, Jen.
Bye.